Vern Gambetta, functional training is a big thing.
Yeah, yeah.
How would you define functional training? What is it for you?
Well, I define function first as integrated multidimensional movement. And for me, functional training is training that incorporates mindful work that works multiple joint, multiple plane, and high proprioceptive demand. And that's appropriate for the sport or activity you're training for. So
Okay.
it's not just doing crazy things, it's doing things with a system and a purpose.
Okay, the functional training movement, I will call it, got really big the last years. So here on FIBO there are many halls about functional training. There are many products. So has it reached its peak? So
well, sorry for interrupting you. I don't know about peak, but I think it's gotten very confused. I think that in the personal training world and the personal fitness world, it's just how weird and how crazy can we make something to make it harder, and that's kind of become in that world what functional training is. My world is the world of performance and more athletic performance, and it's pervaded into that world, and it's had a negative impact in terms of some injuries in that. So I think just like anything, there's going to be a reaction back to the midline, and that's why for me, I think of functional training as, I really don't think of functional training, I just think of what good training is. Is it appropriate for the athlete? Is it appropriate for the sport? I always, as I said in my talk, what's the context? Where does it come from, and what's the goal? If it's just to make somebody tired or make it hard, that's no good.
Okay, so there are many products here. Many like kettlebells, like some waggling boards and stuff. What do you think about all these stuff?
Well, again, I use at various points with various athletes in various sports, I'll use trampolines, I'll use some balance boards selectively. I use kettlebells during certain phases with certain athletes. With my swimmers, we do 2 days a week, we will do some kettlebell swings, but that's it. We don't focus on just kettlebells or just balance boards. It has a place in a whole program.
What development do you expect in the next 5 years? Where is training going?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, I think we're going to get a little more sane again and come back to the midline, and people are starting to understand that you've got to find out what really works, and just pushing the athlete with no plan leads to injuries. And in the sporting world, we have a lot more injuries than we've ever had, and we're training more than we ever had, which makes me question what we're doing.
Okay. So. Regarding the training, regarding your training, so how much would you say is evidence-based, and how much is experience?
Well, I call it practice-based evidence, and certainly everything that I do is founded in science and grounded in science, but not bound by science. Because sports scientists have never invented, to my knowledge, a training technique. There's been a few technological innovations, but it's always been coaches. So I try to validate everything I do to the best of my ability scientifically. But at the end of the day, we have to perform and do what's going to make the athlete better, as long as we do no harm.
Okay, so what are mistakes trainers often do? What are your experiences in that
it's
point?
pretty simple. Too much, too soon. That's the biggest thing that I see. Using inappropriate training methods training methods that aren't appropriate for the age of the athlete or the gender, and not. I always say you fit the training to the athlete, not the athlete to the training.
Okay, and what are your advice to trainers working with sportsmen and working with like normal people?
Well, those are two different answers. Normal people and athletes have their same bodies but different objectives. So I'll answer it if it's okay for the performer, for the sports world, because I don't work in the other world. I could give opinion, but it would just be opinion. I think in the sports world, it's having a breadth and depth of knowledge. So don't specialize, as I said in my talk. Understand how the various components of training fit together, have a good plan, and really know your athlete, and be willing to adjust your training to how the athlete is responding.
Okay, so to sum it up, it's about the individual.
You coach the athlete, not the sport. I learned that from one of my mentors almost 50 years ago. You coach the athlete, not the high jump, not the, and that. And if you do that, it's really hard to go wrong.
Okay. So how important is the feedback of the
Immensely important. Learn to listen, learn to watch, and make sure the athlete is going to be honest with you. Young athletes oftentimes will tell me what they think I want to hear, and sometimes you have to look them in the eye and say, no, I know that isn't quite right.
Okay. Often people try to simulate the situations from a competition while training. But actually, I think that's nearly impossible.
It is. You can't simulate. So my attitude is, as a physical preparation athletic development coach, is I want to prepare the athlete for the demands of training and demands of the sport. I'm not going to replicate. They do that in practice of, say, it's football or swimming or whatever. So I'm going to have them really thoroughly prepared so that they can stand the demands and, in fact, thrive, not just survive.
Okay, and how do I prepare the athlete the best way?
Well, I mean, do you have an hour or 2 hours or a career? I mean, it really depends on the sport and the athlete and the age of the athlete. I mean, and a time of the year. So all of those things are considered. Like one team that I had just finished national championships right now. One team had national championships 2 weeks ago, one 4 weeks, a swimming team. So they're all now, but they're all preparing again for World Championship trials of end of June. So they're on different plans, different events, things like that. So it's a lot of moving pieces, And I'm not trying to make it complex, but it's doing the basics every day and accounting for all the differences that are going to exist.
Okay. Thank you for the interview.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good luck. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks guys.